Welcome to our lesson in Understanding Culture, Society, and Politics. This is Ma'am Carmelita F. Quison, your subject teacher. In this lesson, I will discuss to you the concept of ethnocentrism and cultural relativism. Take note of the important details you will get in this video lesson. Happy learning! So here are our lesson objectives for today. At the end of the lesson, you should be able to explain the importance of cultural relativism in attaining cultural understanding. Specifically, this discussion aims to: number 1, describe ethnocentrism and cultural relativism in the perspective of sociology. Number 2, recognize the importance of cultural relativism in attaining cultural understanding. Before we proceed to our discussion, let's have a review. So are you ready for the review? So here is the instruction. Identify the following. Write your answer on your study notebook. Let's begin. Number 1. It refers to a group of people sharing a common culture within a defined territorial boundaries. Number 2. As defined by Edward B. Taylor, it refers to a complex whole which includes knowledge, beliefs, arts, morals, laws, customs, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of society. Number 3. It refers to the differences in social behaviors that different cultures exhibit around the world. Are you done answering? Okay, so let's check your work. So here are the answers. Number 1, the answer is society. Number 2, culture. And number 3, cultural variation. We will begin this lesson with think for a moment activity. Okay, so it is your opportunity to post and think or evaluate yourself. So you can write your answers or responses in your study notebook. Okay, so let's begin the activity. Think for a moment. If someone will offer you exotic food, what would you do? Next, what can you say to those who let themselves be crucified on the cross during Lenten season, just like Jesus Christ? Lastly, do you know that there are some people who eat the flesh of their loved ones who died? How would you react? Cultural variation is affected by man's geographical setup and social experiences. So there are two perceptions on cultural variability. So namely ethnocentrism and cultural relativism. So let's start with ethnocentrism. Okay, so ethnocentrism came from the words ethnos, which means people, and the centrism means center or middle. So it was invented by sociologist William Graham Sumner in 1906. So pertains to the belief that one's native culture is superior to or the most natural among cultures. Okay, so have you ever seen or eaten food from another country such as dried squid or fried crickets and think of it as weird and gross? Okay, so this is an example of ethnocentrism. That means you use your own culture as the center and evaluate other cultures based on it. So you are judging or making assumptions about the food of other countries based on your own norms, values, or beliefs. So, iniisip mo na hindi dapat kumakain ng mga insekto yung mga tao. Okay, so let's find the answer in this question. Is ethnocentrism bad or good? What do you think? Okay, so on the one hand, ethnocentrism can lead to negative judgments of behaviors of groups or societies. Okay, just like what we see in this picture. Okay, so sabi nitong isang babae, no, itong naka-two-piece, everything covered but her eyes. What a cruel male-dominated culture. And then the other one says, in his mind, nothing covered but her eyes. What a cruel male-dominated culture. Okay, so in ethnocentrism, it encourages narrow-mindedness and unwillingness to recognize many human differences for what they are. It can also lead to discrimination against people who are different. Another side of ethnocentrism. On the other hand, ethnocentrism can create loyalty among the same social group or people in the same society. Okay, for example, it's more fun in the Philippines. So in this logo, it shows na kung gaano tayo ka-proud as a Filipino doon sa ating bansa. 'Di ba? Sa mga foods, sa mga tourist spots na meron tayo, and even dun sa katangian natin, 'di ba? Yung pagiging hospitable natin. So another example, during the World Cup or Olympics, you may tend to root for your own country and believe that the players or teams representing your country are much better. So, dun pumapasok yung tinatawag natin na national pride. So, national pride is also a part of ethnocentrism. Kapag may laban halimbawa si Manny Pacquiao, so, lahat tayo kampi sa kanya at gusto natin na siya yung manalo. So, that's the spirit of national pride. And hindi tayo ganong masaya or hindi tayo ganon kasaya kapag nalaman natin na kapag natalo siya, 'di ba? Unlike kapag nanalo siya, so masayang-masaya tayo at pabor na pabor tayo dun sa decision. Okay, so from the standpoint of society, it discourages innovation and change as well as the solution of social problems because we are generally committed to a particular way of solving our own problems. Since we think that our culture is the central to the universe, so tingin natin sapat na yung kung anong meron tayo. Hindi na siya dapat baguhin, 'di ba? Kasi when we say innovation, pumapasok dito yung invention and discovery. So kung ano na yung meron tayo dahil ethnocentric tayo, so hindi tayo sang-ayon dun sa mga changes. Bagkus gusto nating ikip kung ano yung meron tayo. From the standpoint of individual, it hinders our understanding for others, for it makes us too quick to judge those who are different. So, if I will ask you, is ethnocentrism bad or good? So, what will be your answer? Okay, generally, meron siyang positive side, meron din siyang negative side. Okay. How about cultural relativism? So, it is a practice of viewing another culture by its own context. Okay, so cultural relativism is an ethical theory about the nature of morality, which states that different cultures have different moral codes, judgments, and practices. Sabi nga ni Joan Ferrante dun sa book niya, meron daw dalawang, there are two things about cultural relativism. No, ibig sabihin daw noon, first, that a foreign culture should not be judged by the standard of a home culture. Kaya ang cultural relativism ay kabaligtaran ng ethnocentrism. Kasi sa ethnocentrism, ginajudge niya yung ibang culture based dun sa kultura niya or dun sa home culture niya. While sa cultural relativism naman, ginajudge niya yung culture ng iba dun sa kung anong lipunan ng kinabibilangan niya. So, for example, dito ulit tayo sa crickets. No, instead of thinking fried crickets disgusting, pwede tayong magtanong, why do some cultures eat fried insects? So, maaari nating matutunan na yung palang crickets or grasshoppers are full of protein. At sa Mexico, ito yung isa sa mga famous regional cuisine. At kinakain na siya libo-libong taon na, no? At kilala siya as healthy food source. Okay, so another meaning of cultural relativism. So, right and wrong are culture specific. Yun yung sa cultural relativism. So, when we say culture specific, so ibig sabihin, what is considered moral in one country or in one society may be considered as immoral in other societies. So, since magkakaiba sila ng society, so magkakaiba din sila ng culture. So, dun pumapasok yung paniniwala na no one has the right to judge another's societies. Kasi, kapag culture specific, so nakadepende yun sa kung ano yung kultura na meron sila. Na syempre, nakadepende din sa kung anong society meron sila. So, another way, no, for you to further understand this theory. So, halimbawa, merong dalawang tao, no, pangalanan natin sila, si A at saka si B. Kung halimbawa si A ay naglalaro ng chess, and then si B naman ay naglalaro ng basketball. So, hindi natin kailangang asahan na si A na naglalaro ng chess ay maglalaro na katulad ni B kung paano laruin yung basketball. So, ganun din naman si B, hindi natin pwedeng i-expect sa kanya na yung paglalaro niya ng basketball ay katulad ng paglalaro ng chess ni A. Kasi magkaiba yung rules, magkaiba yung way kung paano sila laruin. Okay, so kung i-compare natin sila dito sa theory na ito, no, similarly, if a person A belongs to one culture, the person B belongs to another culture, then the person A cannot judge the practices of B's culture in accordance with his own moral codes. Kasi nga, magkaiba sila. So, diversity of cultures, even those with conflicting moral beliefs, is not to be considered in terms of right and wrong, or good and bad. Kasi nga dito, walang objective standard. So, no one can say if someone else is right or wrong. So, it is a matter of personal opinion and no society can pass judgment on another society. Okay, another one is cultural relativism is opposite to universalism. So, when we say universalism from the root word universal, so it is something in common and can be found in most societies. Okay, so it is one set of rules for everyone around the world. Okay, so we will further discuss this later. Okay, so there is one fallacy in the argument of cultural differences. All logically sound arguments are reinforced by reason, but here the conclusion doesn't follow the hypothesis. While it is true that each culture has different moral code, that doesn't necessarily translate into the lack of an objective moral truth. 'Di ba? Pag sinasabi kasi natin na fallacy, 'di ba? Ito yung mga maling paniniwala. Or mistaken idea or false ideas. Okay, so for example, if two people from different cultures differ in their opinion with respect to the shape of the earth, yung halimbawa, yung isa sinasabi niya, yun daw mundo ay bilog, and then the other one is sinasabi niya na flat. So, ibig sabihin ba nun pareho silang tama? Kasi 'di ba sa cultural relativism, kailangan mo i-accept na tama yung culture nila kasi yun yung meron doon sa society nila. So, kailangan mo na unawain na ganun. So, ibig sabihin ba nun pareho silang tama? Paano kung magkaiba sila? 'Di ba? Syempre hindi. So, one of them is simply mistaken. So, it is this difference in belief and reality that cultural relativism fails to accommodate. So, also sometimes, people conform to the moral code of their own culture to judge an action as right or wrong. So, however, this becomes problematic when this idea entirely strikes down the idea of moral progress. It is important to question that if one is not allowed to question one's own culture, then how will that person identify and rectify the deep-rooted problems of the culture? Katulad halimbawa nitong susunod na example. So another area where cultural relativism as a theory fails to work is when it stops individuals from criticizing practices that are actually human rights violation. Okay, so there are many societies, no, lalo na sa mga African countries, naniniwala sila na kailangan yung mga babae, kumbaga sa atin dito sa Pilipinas, 'di ba yung mga lalaki yung tinutuli. So sa kanila, parang meron din katulad noon, no, yung tinatawag na circumcision, or what do you call that? The genital mutilation, no, sa ibang mga countries. So, yung genital cutting na tinatawag. So, it is argued that the practice has cultural roots, but such a practice has raised concerns among many international human rights organizations. So, dito nga pumapasok yung katulad ng binanggit natin kanina, yung Universalism, na although magkakaiba tayo ng kultura, meron tayong something in common. Okay, another example is the murder. Diba? Yung pagpatay kasi, in general kasi, or majority sa mga societies, naniniwala na murder is a crime. So, it is an act of, or it is an immoral act. But there are also societies na tinatanggap nila yon. So, for example, sa isang lugar, 'di ba, na kung saan acceptable sa kanila yung murder sa mga masasamang tao. So, tinatanggap nila yon kasi titingnan nila na yun na merong advantage sa kanila or meron silang benefit na natatanggap kapag yung mga masasamang tao ay pinapatay without a due process of law. So, sa universalism kasi, kailangan, bago natin parusahan yung isang tao, kailangan dumaan siya sa due process. Okay, so, that is another example. Okay, so cultural relativism appears as an attractive theory at first, 'di ba? Totoo naman kasi tinitingnan natin na kailangan yung pag-unawa natin sa ibang kultura, 'di ba? Dun sa diversity na meron lagi or present lagi sa lahat ng societies. You have to respect and understand their culture. 'Di ba? Parang maganda siya talaga pakinggan sa umpisa, no? As it promotes a feeling of tolerance and inclusivity of other cultures, but at the same time, it prevents people from acknowledging the flaws in their own and other cultures by putting inhumane practice in the same bracket as difference of opinions. In doing so, it also fails to highlight the fundamentally different concepts of beliefs and reality. So another example, there are many countries and international organizations opposed the act of whaling. So, whaling, yun yung pangunguha ng mga whales. Okay, so for environmental reasons. So these environmental organizations say that there are not many whales left. So kaunti na lang sila, kaya hindi dapat nagkakaroon ng panghuhuli sa mga balyena, no? Pero meron mga countries na kinikilala nila yung panghuhuli ng mga balyena as their cultural practices na ginagawa na nila libo-libong taon na. Okay, so dahil kinikilala nila yon as oceanic culture nila, so this country may say that such a cultural practice should not be opposed based on cultural differences. 'Di ba? So who gets to define what a moral cultural behavior is? So merong laging magkakaiba, no? Kahit na meron tayong something in common, merong iba kasi, yung cultural relativism, yung ginagamit nila as a shield para bigyang katwiran yung mga practices nila na hindi naaayon dun sa majority sa mga societies natin. Okay. So, while the theory has some serious flaws, it also has positive side. So, first, it aims to understand, not to condone or discredit foreign behavior or thinking. So, cultural relativism viewed as a way to mitigate the negative consequences of ethnocentrism. So, since magkabaligtad sila, sa cultural relativism, inuunawa natin yung kultura at nare-respeto natin yung kultura ng iba based dun sa lipunan na ginagalawan nila. So, nababawasan yung mga negative effect ng ethnocentrism, which in opposition naman, ito naman yung nagja-judge na lang or nagdi-discriminate doon sa ibang kultura. Then the second one, find a way to accept other point of views while still upholding our own beliefs and principles. Okay, so if a culture teaches that homosexuality is immoral, for example, but the other person from different culture argues against it, then one should try and understand the other perspective too. So, dito pumapasok yung paggalang o pagrespeto natin doon sa pinaniniwalaan ng iba. Okay, so it emphasizes that one's thinking or ideology doesn't follow an objective, rational, and standard, but is simply a belief that stems from na nagmumula doon from the moral code followed by one's culture. Hence, all the opinions and judgments are merely cultural products. So, para ma-avoid natin yung judging dun sa cultural practices of groups that are different to ours, so pwede natin gamitin yung cultural relativism approach. Okay, so that's all for today. So before we end this lesson, I would like to leave with you this quotation from John F. Kennedy. If we cannot now end our differences, at least we can help make the world safe for diversity. So till next time, thank you. Bye.